We're just going to give it another minute for a couple other members to join us. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I see the recording is on, so I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order on public transit use of 5307 CARES Act funding. Let's go ahead and start with a roll call.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance. Mr. Peterson. Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Zalatel. Ms. LaFrance, are you here?
I'm here, thank you.
Okay. You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As usual, if you'd like to get into the queue, please put yourself in the chat. If you can't access the chat, please just text me and I'll get you into the queue. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jamie Acton to lead us through the presentation.
Great, thank you. Hold on just a second while I share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the first slide, FTA CARES Act funding with People Mover?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning, my name is Jamie Acton. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Public Transportation Department Director. I've been in this role since about 2018. I bring with me 12 years of experience in the transportation field. I've spent my career focusing on mobility management, grants, public involvement, and planning. Also with me today, I have Amanda Bogine, Transit Grants and Finance Manager, in case I need to phone a friend. So the daily mission of my department is to connect our community with safe, reliable transportation options, emphasizing customer service while providing economic, social, and environmental benefits. And then COVID-19 hit.
And actually, sorry for the interruption. Just want to note for the record that we've been joined by Mr. Weddleton. Please continue.
No problem. So as most of you know, on Friday, March 27th, 2020, President Trump signed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act into law. The CARES Act provides emergency assistance and healthcare response for individuals, families, businesses affected by COVID-19 pandemic, and provides emergency appropriations to support executive branch agency operations like FTA during the COVID-19 pandemic. So how has the pandemic impacted People Mover? Well, we've had service shutdowns, we've implemented rider capacity limits, we went fare free for a short period of time, we've been boarding from the rear doors, we have been boarding from the front doors. We've had closures of lobbies and waiting areas to limit gatherings. We've implemented new cleaning and sanitation procedures, and we've installed plexiglass shields on all of our vehicles in the driver compartment. So FTA's support for public transportation through the CARES Act came through with $22.7 billion in urbanized area formula funding. This funding is 100% federal share, meaning no local match is required. Funds are available until they're expended. It supports eligible capital and operating expenses, and the projects and programs must do one of three things: prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. So the total amount of funding available to the MOA, Public Transportation Department, is $18,580,864. A little bit about this funding. All federal transit program requirements apply. 49 U.S. Code Chapter 53 guides all of the public transportation activities. A new split letter with the Alaska Railroad was required. The Alaska Railroad received roughly $27 million, and the MOA received $18 million. We just learned this morning from our partners at FTA that the Alaska Railroad has not applied for their portion of the CARES Act funding, and they are currently trying to figure out eligible projects to use their funding on. We want to make sure to thank the mayor for negotiating an additional $5 million for transit during the split letter process. We appreciate that extra effort and the extra funding that we received. Our application was due to the feds by August 3rd for funds to be obligated in 2020. We anticipate the award to be in front of the Assembly in late November. As of this morning, we've learned that we're in the final concurrence and reservation stage for our application process in obligating these funds. So we anticipate them being available in 2020. So this slide shows the 4 projects that we applied for to FTA. As you'll see, eligible activities on the far left column, budget in the middle, and a little bit of detail on the right. So the first project is operating assistance, a little over $5 million. This provides for labor costs for transit employees due to COVID, PPE materials, supplies that are specific to responding to the pandemic. We have another project, transit security, at about $7 million. This is going to provide contracted security guards at facilities and on buses. Our next project is facility preventative maintenance at just over $3 million. This helps us provide 5 new site enhancement positions that'll assist with the cleaning, sanitation, and maintenance of our bus stops. We currently operate this program with 2 employees. And then the final project is vehicle preventative maintenance at over $3.5 million. This provides for the additional cleaning and COVID exposure prevention in the vehicles. This includes labor, parts, and materials specific to responding. So how was our application developed? We had a lot of consultation that went in with our partners at FTA Region 10. There was hours of research, peer review, and industry webinars that we sat in on the CARES Act funding in response to COVID-19 in transit agencies around the nation. We utilized the FTA guidance regarding specific eligibility and the language requirements for our application to create that right recipe of eligible activities for the funding. All 4 of these projects are part of adopted plans and identified in these plans I'll show you in a bit. We identified a clear nexus between the pandemic and the purpose of the expenditure to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. For example, security is intended to provide contracted security guards on buses and at facilities to ensure safety and security for riders and drivers. This includes addressing appropriate social distancing and safety measures such as rider caps and mask requirements. So we have excuse me, the annual project costs estimated for a 7-year spending plan. At this time, we don't know how much COVID is going to cost PTD. The intent of this funding is to assist in covering those COVID-related costs, so our operating budget isn't negatively impacted. At this time, we are not looking for a budget increase. This is an average of how we would spend our CARES Act funding annually. And COVID costs may require that the grant budgets be adjusted in the ongoing years. For example, transit security and facility preventative maintenance are fixed costs based on contracts and labor rates. As of July 26th, we have already spent $1.5 million related to the pandemic. The CARES Act funding is available through pre-award authority, And we began to incur eligible operating costs starting back in March of 2020. So as I mentioned earlier, this is showing our project support for the 4 projects that we applied to FTA for. There's a Public Transit Advisory Board resolution being drafted. Each of these activities you can see are identified in 3 different plans. The 2020 Transit on the Move prioritized transit security and facility preventative maintenance. The 2018 through 2022 AMATS Transportation Improvement Program identifies all 4 activities. And the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan also identifies all 4 activities. So I think the most important piece of this is how closely we were able to work with our partners at FTA, making sure that we got eligible projects into the queue to move quickly and smoothly, and to be able to obligate money in 2020 for the CARES Act. So with that, I kind of blew through my presentation, but that is the meat of our CARES Act projects and our application to FTA, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Jamie, for the presentation. Are there any questions from the members? So I have one. So when can you remind me again when we expect to receive the funds?
So the funding to the Assembly for appropriation?
Yes.
Yes. So we're hoping that those are available in November.
Okay. Got it. And then I guess just a more fine-tuned version of that question. So has the municipality already received that funding, or have we not received the funding from the FTA?
We have not received the funding from the FTA. We're in the application process to have it brought into our system.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Whittleton?
Sure. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, you know, we've CARES Act funds are a hot button issue right now, and yours are kind of a separate bucket, but now they come back, and I think the public is poised to question what we do on these things, which is certainly legitimate. And wonder what your public outreach is on this. If we look at these on the 25th, and people will perceive this information as coming out to them just a few days prior, I think we'll have pushback on that. No question. Is this legit? Have you checked with the Treasury? Are there other ways to use this? How come this isn't going to support small business? Things like that. And I think those should be addressed loud and clear, very publicly as soon as possible. Just people want it, and we need to give it to them.
Okay. Happy to pull up the supporting documents. That's part of the reason why we wanted to make sure that they tied back into approved plans and documents to show that they had gone through a public process at some point. That being said, definitely understand the scrutiny and the questions for sure. So happy to try to clarify that process.
Can I follow up, Mr.
Sure.
Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, you made an important point there. It ties in with approved plans and documents. That has been a real hang up with us on purchasing those buildings, because they say, wait, this is a pre-existing problem, and it's shown your plans say you should do this anyway, so it's not COVID related. And that conclusion we've gotten quite a bit on other proposals. So pointing to those previous things, you actually need to say, so why are these expenditures different and required as opposed to what you were going to do anyway?
Yeah, I think we definitely can tie every single one of our projects back to a COVID-related piece, the prevention, the preparedness, and the response to COVID with all 4 projects. So happy to put that in writing or however that needs to be expressed.
I'd like it in writing.
Okay.
Post it everywhere and shout it from the hilltop.
Great.
And on your signboards on the buses, whatever you can do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Well, partly to John's question, then I have another one, but is there, we know this is a sort of separate set of funds. Are there a different set of criteria for this versus the other CARES Act monies? That is, well, we saw, for example, we saw a presentation from Merrill Field that was very clearly a bunch of things that were not COVID related. They had basically gotten a kind of clean stimulus, essentially, and they were doing a bunch of things that they had planned to do before. Is your money more like that, or more like the money that we are doing, where, as John flags, we've received a lot of complaints and various accusations regarding how it's used?
I would almost say that this is a blend of federally regulated and stimulus money. It has to follow the 49 U.S. Code, Chapter 53, which guides all of our eligible activities. But then it also has to speak to the 3 tiebacks of preventing, preparing, and responding to COVID. So I think that is where our, when the transit federal guidelines come into play, those are our rules of engagement with these funds. So I think each flavor of whether it's FAA or DHHS or whatnot, we all have kind of different rules that we're playing by right now.
And have other localities already started to deploy these kind of funds?
Yes. Yeah.
And
the goal of these funds was to get them out without as much red tape as possible by FTA. And they have really expedited their process. It's been shocking, actually, how fast they've been able to get the funding out and available.
I think we've learned that perhaps, well, I'm glad to hear about FTA. I think we've learned that sometimes we'll do the same thing as other communities and nevertheless receive additional scrutiny. The railroad, the point you made there is really interesting. So I think you said that your application deadline was August 3rd. That's obviously passed. Did the railroad have a different deadline, or did they just miss it? In which case, are those $27 million not going to come into Alaska?
So the funding is for the railroad is still available. They just chose not to try to apply within the 2020 timeframe. FTA every year shuts down for about a month and a half or so to wrap up their financial system and their year end, and then pushes through to try to obligate the rest of the money that they have on the books within that calendar year. So my understanding from our FTA liaison this morning was that they just hadn't applied at this point. They plan to apply in 2021 once they have some eligible identified projects to apply for.
That's really interesting. I mean, hopefully the pandemic will be winding down by early 2021, and yet they'll still be able to use these monies to respond to COVID. Is that right?
Yes, correct. The money is available until expended.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm next in the queue, just had a couple of questions, and I think you went into this a little bit during your presentation, but can you, in a little bit more detailed fashion, describe how you came up with the application and that process with the FTA, and then, I'm curious to know, is the FTA the one that gave you sort of the check of approval that these are all eligible expenses, or did we go through the additional step, or is there a need to go through an additional step of talking to Treasury about that?
So I'm going to use my phone a friend and rope Amanda Bogine in on this about the application development, but she can speak to that process. We sat down as a team and made sure that the activities were identified and could be tied back to the CARES Act, the prevent, prepare, respond piece, and were part of an adopted plan already. So we started there, and then with our partners at FTA, this is where I probably need Amanda to step in. With our partners at FTA, we began that application process. and I'll let her kind of chime in on that.
Sure, and this is Amanda Bogine. Our partner at FTA has been very supportive in terms of what exactly it is that they're looking for. And so they provided us a template, if you will, of projects and how we have to put that together into the application. And then it goes through numerous approvals and reviews. So for instance, the initial application went through a transmittal process where it went through a number of, I guess scrutiny would probably be the best word to use in terms of, are these projects focusing on COVID and CARES, and there's specific language that we had to identify. Does this tie back to the TIP as far as the 5307 goes? And then from there, after FTA does their initial scrutiny, then in order for us to be able to get it to the Department of Labor, the deadline was August 3rd. And basically what was communicated to us was the feds from above want us to process this funding as quickly as possible for the pandemic. And if we're electing to wait, then additional scrutiny as far as what our intent for that funding will be reviewed. And then additionally, the pot of money is finite. So first in, first out, basically. So the sooner you get your application in, the sooner you can confirm that you get those dollars as well. So currently we're at the final concurrence. So it's gone through DOL and now it's going through the obligation process. So setting those funds aside. And then once that comes into play, then we'll go through our internal process with the municipality as far as getting those into our financial system and getting the assembly's approval and whatnot.
Got it. Thanks. So the second question that I had was, did the public transit department, did you all consider any other uses as you were making the application?
The department didn't. So the way that the proposal came about was we were first looking at if there was the availability to pitch a proposal for the alcohol tax. And we started kind of going down that vein and then realized, wait, these projects are really great. Transit security, the facility preventative maintenance, they're actually really great projects for our CARES Act funding. And so we started to go down that road. These were kind of no-brainer, very, very directly tied to the three actions of preventing, preparing, and responding to COVID, and were the obvious uses for these funds to be able to obligate them quickly, like FTA is asking the money to be done. Other agencies are looking at ways that they can use the funds in other applications, but a lot of them are choosing to use them on operating assistance and similar to us, vehicle and facility maintenance, preventative maintenance. The transit security was one that is a little unique, but we were able to, with the emergency orders that are in place, with the mandates that are currently required, we were able to very clearly tie it back to the transit security. So we really felt like these were the best uses of the funds for this time, and really are excited, and as is PTAB and some of the feedback that we have received, excited to be able to implement these projects.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I guess y'all know how much I love People Mover. So rather than me eating up everyone else's time asking questions, if there aren't any other questions, I'm happy to just end this work session. Okay, Great. Well, thanks so much,
Thank you, Felix.
Jamie, and everyone else for your work on this. And I'll probably have some follow-up questions via email. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Bye, everyone. So our next work session's at 12:20. See everyone then.